Martha Campbell's voice cracked across the dawn air, shattering the African morning's tranquility. "Dr. Hayes, you need to see this now." 50 feet from Samuel Whitfield's cabin stood an ancient cheetah, motionless as carved stone. 3 hours. The creature hadn't moved for 3 hours. Its amber eyes locked on one window, the window where Sam lay dying. "Impossible," Hayes whispered, binoculars trembling. The tracking collar data made no sense. This cheetah, this ghost from Sam's past, had traveled 400 kilometers through hostile lion territory. A journey that should have killed him 3 times over. From his deathbed. Sam's voice came paper-thin but certain. He remembers. After all these years, he remembers. Martha watched the magnificent predator, its scarred shoulder catching the first light. In 25 years of wildlife observation, she'd never witnessed anything like this. Some bonds, she realized, transcend species, time, and even death itself. Before we continue, please leave a like and let me know which city you're watching from. Now, let's get back to the story. The Masai Mara Conservation Reserve stretched endlessly beneath the October sky, golden grassland rippling like an ancient sea. At its heart, a simple wooden cabin had stood for 25 years, home to a man who'd chosen isolation over absolution. Samuel Whitfield. Sam, to the few who knew him, was 68 years old and dying. His weathered hands, which had once steadied rifles in Vietnamese jungles and later gentled countless wounded animals, now trembled with mortality's approach. The pancreatic cancer had arrived like a thief 3 months ago, stealing his strength but not his resolve. He'd been a combat medic in 1964, stationed at Da Nang when the telegram came his brother Daniel, just 19, had been killed in action near Pleiku. The guilt of surviving while his younger brother died had driven Sam from medicine, from America, from everything except this remote corner of Kenya where he could dedicate his life to saving what others would let die. Martha Campbell understood such dedication. At 52, the head nurse had her own ghosts, her son Michael, forever frozen at 17 in twisted metal on a Nairobi highway. She'd fled South Africa for Kenya, trading one heartbreak for purpose. In Sam's final struggle, she recognized a kindred spirit, someone who'd transformed grief into service. Her steady presence had become Sam's anchor these last weeks, her understanding deeper than medical training could explain. Dr. Robert Hayes represented everything Sam had rejected. At 45, the conservation director ran the reserve with spreadsheets and regulations, seeing animals as populations rather than individuals. His pressed khakis and diplomatic smile masked a deep frustration with Sam's methods. Emotional attachment compromises conservation science, he'd often declared. Yet even Hayes couldn't deny Sam's mysterious gift with injured wildlife. The cheetah maintaining vigil was no ordinary predator. Ghost named for the crescent-shaped scar, pale as moonlight across his left shoulder, was ancient by cheetah standards. 22 years in the wild defied every statistic. Sam had freed him from a poacher's snare in 1999 when Ghost was barely adolescent. The mathematics were simple. Cheetahs rarely lived past 14 in the wild. Ghost's presence here, now, suggested something beyond science. The cabin, the reserve, the morning light painting everything gold, this was Sam's cathedral, his place of penance. And now, as his body failed, the wild had come to bear witness. The diagnosis had come in July, delivered with clinical detachment by a specialist in Nairobi who'd never met Sam before and would never see him again. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. Perhaps 3 to 6 months if he accepted aggressive treatment. Sam had listened quietly, his weathered hands folded in his lap, then asked a single question. Can you cure it? The oncologist's hesitation was answer enough. Sam returned to the reserve that same day, refusing the hospital bed, the chemotherapy, the false hope of buying weeks at the cost of dignity. He'd seen enough death in Vietnam to recognize its approaching footsteps, and he would meet it on his own terms, in the only place that had given his life meaning since Daniel died. When Dr. Hayes learned of Sam's decision, his reaction was explosive. This is selfish. Sam, pure selfishness. Hayes had slammed his palm on the desk in the reserve's administrative building. We have protocols for staff medical emergencies, insurance liability, board members asking questions. You can't just decide to die here like some romantic novel character. But Sam's resolve was granite. I've given this place 25 years. Robert, every sunrise, every wounded animal, every anti-poaching patrol I funded anonymously. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking to finish where I started. Martha had been the one to bridge the chasm between them. With quiet authority earned through her own losses, she'd arranged for medical equipment to be discreetly moved to Sam's cabin, taken on his care personally during off hours, and managed Hayes's concerns with careful documentation. Some battles, she told Hayes privately, aren't meant to be won, only witnessed with grace. Her understanding ran deeper than professional duty. She recognized in Sam's choice the same fierce autonomy that had helped her survive Michael's death. The morning Ghost arrived changed everything. October 15th, 5:47 a.m., recorded precisely in the reserve's log. A junior ranger named Thomas Okoye first spotted the Cheetah, radioing in with barely contained excitement. "Base, this is Patrol 7. We have a situation at Mr. Sam's cabin. A cheetah. Very old, just standing there. Not hunting, not passing through. Just watching." Within an hour, the entire conservation staff knew something unprecedented was occurring. Ghost hadn't been seen in the area for 2 decades. The GPS data from his tracking collar, one of the older models still functioning, told an impossible story. Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the reserve's wildlife biologist, stared at the computer screen in disbelief. This can't be right. He's traveled over 400 kilometers in 6 days, through the Mara River crossing, past 3 separate Lion Pride's territories, across the main highway at night. Hayes demanded verification, suspecting equipment malfunction, but the satellite confirmations were undeniable. Ghost had abandoned his established territory during peak hunting season, crossing landscapes that would challenge a healthy young cheetah, much less one of advanced age. The journey should have killed him through exhaustion, predation, or starvation. Yet here he stood, 50 feet from Sam's cabin, magnificent despite his years. The greater shock came when the sun fully rose, revealing Ghost wasn't alone. 3 younger cheetahs, approximately 4 years old, maintained position 30 meters behind him in a protective formation. This defied every principle of cheetah behavior. Adult males were solitary creatures, occasionally forming coalitions with brothers but never caring for offspring. Martha watched through binoculars as one of the younger cats, bearing a shoulder scar eerily similar to Ghost's, tried to approach the cabin. Ghost turned with surprising speed, a low vocalization stopping the youngster immediately. "My God," Martha breathed. "He's teaching them. He's actually teaching them something." Sam had been drifting in and out of consciousness all morning, the pain medication creating fog banks in his mind. But when Martha whispered the news of Ghost's arrival, his eyes cleared with startling intensity. She helped him to the window, supporting his frail weight as he looked out at the impossible scene. "He brought his family," Sam whispered, tears tracking down his sunken cheeks. "After all these years, all these miles, he brought them here to show them." His voice broke. Martha held him steady as his legs trembled. "Show them what, Sam? That humans can be trusted, that we're not all hunters, that sometimes—" Sam's breath rattled. "Sometimes we keep our promises." The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the savannah, and still Ghost maintained his vigil, as patient as the earth itself. Martha discovered the box by accident. She'd been organizing Sam's medications on the bedside table when her elbow knocked over a water glass, sending it rolling beneath the narrow bed. Kneeling to retrieve it, her fingers brushed against something wooden, smooth with age. She pulled out a rectangular box, Ceylon teak by the look of it, with brass hinges gone green with time. A small padlock hung open from the clasp. "Sam," she called softly. But he was deep in morphine-induced sleep. Through the window, Ghost remained at his post, unchanged after 12 hours. Martha hesitated, then lifted the lid. Inside lay dozens of letters, each in an envelope addressed to Daniel Whitfield, Heaven's 1st Infantry. The paper was various ages, some yellow and brittle from the 1990s, others crisp and recent. With trembling fingers, Martha opened one dated October 1999. Dear Daniel, it read in Sam's careful script. Today I saved your cheetah. Found him in a poacher's snare near the eastern border. Left shoulder torn but not beyond healing. He was young, maybe 3 years old, all fury and fear. Took me 3 hours just to get close enough to cut the wire. I sang Amazing Grace. Remember how you loved that hymn? He went still when I sang, like you used to when Mom sang you to sleep. When I finally freed him, he looked at me for the longest time before disappearing into the grass. That's number 12. Danny, 12 lives saved because you couldn't save your own. Only 73 more to reach my promise. Your brother, Sam. Martha's vision blurred. She opened another. From 2007. Daniel, saved a baby elephant today. Fell in a well near the village. The mother was frantic, charging anyone who came close. Took us 14 hours to dig a ramp. Number 43, still keeping score, still keeping my promise. I told you I'd save 10 lives for everyone you couldn't in that rice paddy. 6 soldiers you saved that day before the sniper got you. That means 60 for me. I'm almost there. Little brother, the most recent letter was dated just 3 weeks ago, when Sam could barely hold a pen. Danny, I'm dying. Guess you know that already. Saved number 87 last month, a serval cat with infected wounds. I've overshot our deal by 27 souls. Hope that counts for something. I'm scared. Danny. Not of dying, but of finally finding out if I did enough. If any amount could ever be enough to forgive myself for coming home when you didn't. Martha carefully replaced the letters, her hands shaking. She understood now the isolation, the dedication, the refusal to leave. This wasn't just a job for Sam. It was a cathedral of penance, each saved animal a prayer for absolution. Dr. Hayes arrived at the cabin that afternoon with 2 rangers and a veterinary team. His face was set with administrative determination. This has gone on long enough. Martha, that animal is clearly distressed, potentially rabid, and poses a danger to everyone here. We're going to tranquilize it and relocate it to the Southern Territory. No. Martha stepped onto the porch, positioning herself between Hayes and Ghost. Absolutely not. Martha, be reasonable. You're a medical professional. You understand liability. If that cheetah attacks someone, look at him. Robert, really look. Martha's voice carried an authority that made Hayes pause. He's maintaining exactly 50 feet distance. His body language is calm, non-aggressive. Those younger cats, they're learning something from this. Learning they're animals. Martha, not students in a classroom. From inside the cabin, Sam's voice rose weakly but clearly. Robert, please. Hayes pushed past Martha to find Sam struggling to sit up in bed. Don't do this. Robert. He came. 400 kilometers. Through hell. Let nature take its course. Nature. Hayes's frustration exploded. Nature is random. Sam, brutal. It doesn't care about your guilt or your promises to a dead brother. The words hung in the air like a slap. Sam's face crumpled, but Hayes continued, his own pain suddenly spilling out. My father died alone in a hospital in Michigan while I was here counting zebras. I couldn't get back in time. You think you're the only one carrying guilt? The difference is, I don't endanger an entire reserve to indulge my grief. Martha watched something shift in the room's emotional temperature. Robert, she said quietly, when did your father pass? 6 years ago, November. Hayes's shoulders sagged slightly. And you've been here ever since, never taking leave, working 18-hour days. Martha's tone was gentle but knowing. We all have our cathedrals. Robert, Sam built his from saved animals. You built yours from policies and protocols. But right now, Something extraordinary is happening here. Something that might teach us about connections we don't understand. Dr. Sarah Mitchell appeared in the doorway, tablet in hand, eyes wide with discovery. Dr. Hayes, you need to see this. The DNA results from the scat samples near Ghost's position. Those 3 younger cheetahs, they're his offspring. All 3. Different mothers, but definitely his. Hayes frowned. That's not unusual. Males mate with multiple females. You don't understand, Sarah continued, excitement building. Male cheetahs don't raise cubs, ever. They mate and leave, but these 3, based on scarring patterns and age estimates, Ghost has been with them for at least 2 years. He's been actively parenting, teaching them. It's completely unprecedented in the literature. The room fell silent, except for Sam's labored breathing and the distant chirping of Ghost's unusual vocalization, not a hunting call, not a mating call, but something else entirely. Something that sounded almost like a vigil song. October 1999. The morning Sam first met Ghost. The African sun was a furnace, turning the savannah into a shimmering mirage. Sam had been walking the eastern boundary, checking for snare lines, when he heard a sound that made his blood run cold. Not a roar or typical cheetah chirp, but a desperate, keening cry that spoke of mortal terror. He found the young cheetah 20 minutes later, caught in a poacher's wire snare that had bitten deep into his left shoulder. The wire was old, rusted, designed for smaller game but deadly enough for any creature that struggled against it. The cheetah, barely out of adolescence, perhaps 3 years old, had been fighting for hours. Blood painted the grass in a 10-foot radius, and his shoulder was raw meat where the wire had cut through spotted fur into muscle. Sam's first instinct was to radio for the veterinary team, but he was 4 hours from base, and the cheetah's eyes held that glassy look that preceded shock and death. Those eyes, amber, wild, terrified, locked onto Sam's, and in them, Sam saw something that transported him back to a medical tent in Da Nang, to young soldiers crying for their mothers as life leaked out through wounds he couldn't heal fast enough. Easy, friend, Sam whispered, setting down his pack slowly. The cheetah exploded in renewed struggle, the wire cutting deeper. Sam sat down in the grass, 30 feet away, and did something that surprised even him. He began to sing. Amazing grace. How sweet the sound. That saved a wretch like me. His voice was rough, unused to song since childhood, but the melody was carved into his soul. Daniel had loved that hymn, would beg their mother to sing it every Sunday night before bed. 8-year-old Daniel, with his gap-toothed grin, collecting broken birds and injured squirrels, convinced every creature could be saved with enough love. The cheetah went still, not the stillness of death but of intense listening. Sam continued singing, moving imperceptibly closer with each verse. I once was lost, but now am found. Was blind, but now I see. 3 hours. That's how long it took. 3 hours of singing, of patient approach, of fighting his own trembling hands and memories of other wounds, other blood. When Sam finally reached the cheetah, the animal was beyond exhaustion, sides heaving, that distinctive tear-mark pattern on his face mixed with real tears of pain. Sam's wire cutters shook as he positioned them. This is going to hurt, he told the cheetah, looking directly into those amber eyes. But then you'll be free, I promise. You'll be free. The wire snapped with a sound like breaking bones. The cheetah screamed a sound Sam would never forget, then collapsed. Sam worked quickly, cleaning the wound with precious water from his canteen, applying antibiotic powder, binding it with strips torn from his own shirt. The cheetah never moved, just watched him with those impossible eyes. When Sam finally stepped back, he expected the animal to bolt immediately. Instead, the cheetah struggled to his feet, looked at Sam for a long moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, then limped slowly into the tall grass. At the ridgeline, he turned back once, and Sam could have sworn he saw acknowledgement in that gaze before the cheetah vanished. That night, Sam wrote his first letter to Daniel in 5 years. His hands shook as he described the rescue, the singing, the moment of connection. Number 12. Danny, I saved number 12 today. A cheetah with eyes like yours when you were scared. I think you would have loved him. Present day. October 2024. The vigil had entered its second day. International media had somehow caught wind of the story, and 3 news vans were parked at the reserve's entrance, though Hayes had forbidden them closer access. The story was perfect for the digital age. Ancient cheetah travels 400 kilometers to dying man's bedside. Ghost hadn't moved from his position, though he'd allowed himself to lie down, sphinx-like, always facing Sam's window. The 3 younger cheetahs had spread out in a protective semicircle, taking turns watching different approaches. Sarah Mitchell had set up observation equipment, documenting every behavior. "This is extraordinary," she told Martha during a brief break. "See how the youngest one, the female with the white tail tip, she's mimicking Ghost's exact posture, and the 2 males. They're maintaining perfect sight lines to protect the group while keeping visual contact with the cabin. This is learned behavior, not instinct." Sam's moments of lucidity were becoming rarer. But when conscious, he insisted on being positioned where he could see Ghost. During one clear moment, he told Martha about what he called the Morrison Code, his father's rules about courage passed down through generations. "Dad was in World War II. Normandy," Sam whispered, his voice paper-thin. "Lost his best friend on Omaha Beach. Came home and created these rules for living with loss. Rule 1. Every life saved honors those lost. Rule 2. Courage isn't the absence of fear, but action despite it. Rule 3. Some debts can only be paid forward, never back." Martha squeezed his hand gently. "Daniel followed the code too, didn't he?" Sam's eyes filled with tears. "Better than I ever did." The Whitfield house in Ohio was small but warm, filled with the chaos of 2 boys and working parents. Sam was 14, Daniel 8, when they found the sparrow with the broken wing in the backyard. Sam wanted to put it out of its misery. It was what their father would have done, practical and quick. But Daniel had cradled that tiny bird in his small hands and looked up at Sam with eyes that could have melted stone. "We have to try. Sammy, we have to at least try." They'd built a shoebox nest, fed the bird water through an eyedropper their mother provided, watched over it in shifts like tiny sentinels. Sam remembered being annoyed at first he had baseball practice, friends to meet. But Daniel's devotion was absolute. He sang to that bird, told it stories, promised it the whole sky once its wing healed. The miracle was that it worked. 6 weeks later, they released the sparrow from their front porch. It circled the house 3 times before disappearing, and Daniel had grabbed Sam's hand, jumping with joy. "We did it. Sammy, we saved him." That night, Daniel had made Sam promise something that seemed silly at the time, but would later define Sam's entire life. "Promise if I can't save things anymore, you'll do it for me. Promise you'll be the one who helps." Sam had ruffled his little brother's hair, laughing. "Sure, buddy, I promise." 8 years later, when the telegram came about Daniel's death, Sam learned his brother had died running back into enemy fire to drag wounded soldiers to safety. 6 men lived because 19-year-old Daniel Whitfield couldn't walk past suffering without acting. The 7th bullet found him. Dr. Sarah Mitchell's research had attracted the attention of the International Cheetah Conservation Foundation. She was on her 3rd video conference of the day, trying to explain the inexplicable to skeptical colleagues worldwide. "The genetic data is irrefutable," she insisted to a panel of experts on her laptop screen. "These 3 cubs have different mothers but the same father, Ghost. Based on scarring patterns and behavioral observation, he's been with them consistently for at least 2 years, possibly longer." "That's impossible," argued Dr. Leopold Steinberg from Berlin. "Male cheetahs are solitary except for sibling coalitions. They don't raise offspring." "I'm looking at them right now," Sarah replied, turning her laptop camera toward the window. "The male we call Ghost is clearly directing their movements, their positions. When the youngest tried to approach the cabin yesterday, he corrected her with a vocalization I've never heard before. They defer to him completely. Dr. Patricia Williams from the San Diego Zoo leaned forward on the screen. Has there been any contact between the cheetah and the dying man? Sarah shook her head. Not yet. Ghost maintains exactly 50 feet distance. But Samuel Whitfield is deteriorating rapidly. If contact is going to happen... She didn't finish the sentence. Everyone understood. The clock was running on 2 live Sams and potentially Ghosts, given his advanced age and the toll of his journey. Whatever was going to happen between them, it would happen soon. That evening, as the sun painted the Savannah gold and crimson, Martha noticed something new. Ghost had stood up and taken 3 steps closer to the cabin, now 47 feet away. It wasn't much, just 3 steps, but after 2 days of absolute stillness, it felt momentous. The younger cheetahs adjusted their positions accordingly, maintaining their protective formation. Inside the cabin, Sam's breathing had changed, becoming more labored. Martha knew the signs. They were entering the final phase. She wondered if Ghost knew it too. If some ancient wisdom whispered to him that time was running out for goodbyes. The crisis came at sunset on the 3rd day. Sam's vital signs plummeted without warning, blood pressure dropping, heart rate becoming erratic, breathing reduced to shallow gasps that barely moved his chest. Martha worked with practiced efficiency, adjusting IV drips, checking oxygen levels, but she knew they'd crossed into territory where medical intervention was merely delaying the inevitable. We need to move him to the medical facility, Dr. Hayes insisted, having rushed to the cabin when Martha called. We have better equipment there, more options. There are no options, Martha said quietly, drawing Hayes aside. His organs are shutting down. Moving him now would only cause pain. Through the window, Ghost remained at his vigil, now standing again, facing the cabin with an intensity that seemed to penetrate the walls. The 3 younger cheetahs had moved closer to him, forming a tighter formation as if sensing the approaching end. Sam's eyes opened, startlingly clear despite the morphine. His lips moved. No sound at first, then barely audible words. Outside. Please. Need to go outside. Sam! No! Hayes stepped forward. You're too weak. The stress could kill me. Sam's mouth twisted in what might have been a smile. Robert. I'm already dying. Please. One last sunset. One last time. Martha checked his vitals again, weak but stable for the moment. She looked at Hayes, then at the window where Ghost waited. We could support him. Use the wheelchair. Just to the porch. This is insane. Hayes ran his hands through his hair. The liability. If something happens, something is already happening. Martha interrupted. Something that transcends your paperwork. Robert. This man gave 25 years of his life to this place. He's asking for 5 minutes of dignity. Sam's hand found Martha's, his grip surprisingly strong. Martha, I need to see him. Need to thank him. Thank him for what? Sam? For remembering, for teaching me that love doesn't need words. His eyes moved to Hayes. Robert, you asked about my brother once. Daniel died saving 6 men he'd never met. Ran into machine gun fire 3 times. Dragging wounded to safety. The 7th time. Sam's breath hitched. I've spent 60 years trying to understand that kind of courage. Ghost. He just traveled 400 kilometers through death to stand vigil for a friend. Maybe courage is just showing up when it matters. The room fell silent except for the steady beep of monitors and Ghost's low, continuous vocalization outside a sound between a purr and a prayer. Hayes stood frozen for a long moment. Then his shoulders dropped in surrender. God help me. Martha, get Thomas and James to help. We'll support him on both sides. But if he starts to crash, we bring him straight back in, Martha assured him. It took 15 minutes to prepare Sam. Martha wrapped him in his warmest blanket, the one his mother had made decades ago, its edges frayed, but colors still vibrant. Thomas Okoye and James Mwangi, two of the strongest rangers, positioned themselves on either side of Sam's wheelchair. Sarah Mitchell cleared the porch of equipment, making space. Word had spread somehow, and a dozen staff members gathered at a respectful distance, watching in silence. The sun was painting the sky in shades of amber and rose as they wheeled Sam onto the porch. The temperature had dropped, October bringing its evening chill, but Sam didn't shiver. His eyes were locked on Ghost, who had risen to his feet, every muscle taut with attention. "Stop here," Sam whispered when they reached the porch edge. "This is good." For a moment that stretched like eternity, man and Cheetah regarded each other across 47 feet of African earth. Then Ghost did something that made every observer catch their breath. He began to walk forward, not the cautious creep of a predator or the wary approach of wild to human. Ghost walked with deliberate purpose, each step measured and certain. The three younger cheetahs started to follow, but Ghost made that unique vocalization, the one Sarah had been trying to classify, and they froze, holding their positions. 40 feet, 30, 20. Sarah Mitchell was recording everything, her hands shaking slightly as she held the camera. Dr. Hayes stood rigid, ready to intervene but mesmerized by what he was witnessing. At 10 feet, Ghost stopped. This close. Everyone could see the toll of his 22 years, the gray muzzle, the clouded left eye, the prominent ribs beneath still beautiful spotted fur. The crescent scar on his shoulder was silver in the dying light, a mirror to Sam's own scars, visible and invisible. Sam slowly, painfully, extended his right hand, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. His voice came soft as wind through grass. "Hello, old friend." Ghost took another step, then another. At 5 feet, Sam began to sing, his voice barely a whisper, but the melody clear. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Ghost's body seemed to shudder with recognition. He covered the remaining distance in 2 fluid steps and pressed his great scarred head into Sam's extended palm. The contact was electric, 25 years of separation bridged in an instant. Ghost's purr, deep, resonant, impossible, filled the air. "That saved a wretch like me." Sam's voice broke, tears streaming down his weathered cheeks. His other hand came up, trembling, to rest on Ghost's neck. "You remembered the song." Ghost pushed closer, his body pressing against Sam's legs, his purr intensifying. The younger cheetahs watched from their positions, learning something beyond instinct, witnessing something beyond nature's usual rules. "I'm sorry," Sam whispered, his fingers finding the old scar on Ghost's shoulder, tracing it gently. "Sorry I couldn't do more. Sorry for every snare I didn't find, every hurt I couldn't heal." Ghost lifted his great head, and for one impossible moment, amber eyes met gray ones with perfect understanding. Then the ancient cheetah did something no one had ever documented in the wild. He laid his head in Sam's lap, the full weight of trust and farewell. Martha was crying silently. Hayes had removed his glasses, wiping at his eyes. Even the gathered staff stood in reverent silence, witnesses to something that would reshape their understanding of the bonds possible between species. "Thank you," Sam breathed, his hand stroking Ghost's head with infinite gentleness. "Thank you for coming so far, for showing me that love doesn't end with death. It just changes shape." The sun touched the horizon, painting everything gold: the grass, the cabin, the man, the cheetah. Ghost's 3 offspring maintained their vigil, and Sam realized with sudden clarity what Ghost had been teaching them. Not hunting techniques or territorial boundaries, but something far more precious: that humans could be trusted, that kindness existed, that some connections transcended the divide between wild and civilized. "Your babies," Sam said, looking at the three younger cheetahs. You're teaching them about us, about trust. He managed a weak laugh that turned into a cough. You're a better teacher than I ever was. Ghost lifted his head at the cough, concern evident in his posture. He stepped back slightly, allowing Sam to breathe easier, but maintained contact with one paw resting against Sam's foot connection without constriction. Sir, Thomas said gently, we should get you back inside. The temperature is dropping. Sam nodded weakly. As the Rangers prepared to wheel him back, Sam looked once more at Ghost. I kept my promise, friend. 87 lives saved. Tell Daniel. Tell him I did my best. Ghost stepped back, allowing the humans to take Sam inside. But instead of retreating to his 47-foot boundary, he moved to just 15 feet from the porch and settled into his Sphinx position, closer than ever before. The three younger cheetahs adjusted their positions accordingly, creating a perfect diamond formation with Ghost at the point nearest the cabin. Inside, as Martha settled Sam back into bed, his vital signs surprisingly stable after the exertion. Sam spoke in a voice full of wonder. He forgave me, Martha. After all these years, all this guilt, he came 400 kilometers to forgive me. No, Sam, Martha said softly, adjusting his blankets. He came to thank you and to say goodbye. Through the window, Ghost's silhouette remained perfectly still against the darkening sky, a sentinel keeping watch as the stars began their nightly emergence. His offspring maintained their positions with inherited patience, learning their final lesson from their remarkable father that love required presence, that loyalty transcended species, and that some debts of gratitude could only be paid in person, no matter the distance or danger involved. The night deepened, and still Ghost waited, his ancient eyes never leaving the soft light emanating from Sam's window. The hours after the encounter passed in a strange suspension of time. Sam's body, which had rallied for those precious moments with Ghost, now began its final surrender. Martha monitored his vitals with professional calm while her heart broke with each labored breath he took. The morphine dose had been increased, but Sam fought against the fog, desperate to remain conscious for what time remained. At midnight, something shifted. Sam's eyes opened with startling clarity, the confusion of recent days replaced by acute awareness. Martha, he said, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks. I need to tell you something. She moved closer, taking his hand. Through the window, Ghost remained at his new position, 15 feet from the porch, a silver shadow in the moonlight. I'm here, Sam. I've been a coward, Sam said, tears gathering in his eyes. 60 years of cowardice dressed up as service? Sam, no. Please, let me say this. His grip tightened on her hand. Daniel was the brave one, always was. When he was 12, he stood up to 3 older boys beating a stray dog, got a broken nose for his trouble but saved that dog. When he enlisted, I begged him to claim conscientious objector status. Our mother was Quaker. He could have avoided combat, but Daniel said, someone has to go, Sammy. Someone has to help the wounded. He became a medic because of me, because I was one. He wanted to be like his big brother. Sam's breathing grew ragged. Martha adjusted his oxygen, but he continued, compelled to confess. I was supposed to protect him. That was my job, protect my little brother. Instead, I taught him to run toward danger, to save others. The telegram said he died trying to rescue wounded soldiers, but I never knew the details. Couldn't bear to know. Martha squeezed his hand. You've honored him, Sam. Every animal you've saved has been penance, not honor. Sam's eyes blazed with 60 years of suppressed anguish. I hid here, Martha. Hid from family, from friends who reminded me of him, from any chance at my own life. I thought if I saved enough lives, the ledger would balance. But how do you balance a brother's laugh? How do you replace the children he never had? The man he never became? Sam, look outside. Martha said softly. That cheetah traveled 400 kilometers through impossible danger, not for the man who hid, but for the man who saved him, who sang to him, who showed him gentleness in a world of snares and bullets. Sam's eyes moved to the window where Ghost waited. There's a letter, he whispered. In the box. Daniel's last letter. I've carried it for 60 years, but could never read it. Would you? Martha retrieved the teak box, finding a yellowed envelope at the very bottom, marked Daniel Whitfield, U.S. Army Medical Corps, March 3, 1964. The paper inside was tissue thin, the ink faded but legible. She unfolded it carefully. My dearest Sammy, Martha read, her voice steady despite her tears. If you're reading this, then my premonition was right, and I didn't make it home. Please don't be angry with me for writing this. I needed you to know some things. First, you're the best brother anyone could ask for. You taught me everything important, how to be gentle with wounded things, how to stand up for those who can't stand for themselves, how to sing when you're scared. Yes, I know you only sang when you thought I was asleep, but I heard you, Sammy, every time. Second, I'm not here because of you, or despite you. I'm here because this is who we are, who the Whitfield men have always been. Dad saved his squad at Normandy. Grandpa was a firefighter who died pulling children from a burning school. We run toward trouble, not away. It's not a curse, it's our gift. Third, and most important, if I don't come home, I need you to live twice as hard. Not half a life in mourning, but double in celebration. Save what you can, love who you can, sing whenever possible. The world needs people who understand that gentleness is its own kind of courage. I'm not afraid, Sammy. Well, that's a lie. I'm terrified. But I'm also proud to be here. Proud to follow your example. Proud to maybe save someone's brother, someone's son. If I die, it won't be your fault. It will be my choice, my honor, my small gesture in an enormous world. Don't you dare blame yourself. Instead, remember that 8-year-old who saved a sparrow. The boy who believed everything broken could be healed with enough love. Be him again. All my love, always. Danny, P.S. When you have sons, and you will, you're too good not to be a father. Tell them about their uncle who was brave because his brother taught him how. The letter trembled in Martha's hands. Sam was sobbing now. 60 years of grief finally breaking free. He knew, Sam gasped. He knew he wouldn't come back. He knew he was loved, Martha corrected gently. He knew his brother would carry on. But I didn't. Sam's voice broke. No wife, no children, no life beyond this place. I failed him. Martha set the letter aside and took Sam's face in her hands, forcing him to meet her eyes. You saved 87 lives. You inspired dozens of Rangers. You showed that American who'd lost everything in war could find redemption in preservation. Ghost out there. His children will remember humans with trust instead of fear because of you. That's not failure. Sam, that's legacy. The hours crept toward dawn. Sam's lucid moments became fewer, shorter. At 3 a.m., his breathing changed, becoming shallow and irregular. What medical texts called Cheney-Stokes respiration. What Martha recognized as the body's final rhythm. She held his hand, singing softly not Amazing Grace, but an old lullaby her mother had sung, about rest and rivers and going home. At 3:47 a.m., Sam's eyes opened one last time. He looked toward the window where Ghost had risen to his feet, facing the cabin. Tell Daniel, Sam whispered, the words barely breath. Tell him I kept my promise. Martha leaned close. He knows, Sam. He always knew. Sam smiled a real smile, peaceful and complete. His eyes remained on Ghost as his breathing slowed, stopped, resumed briefly, then ceased altogether. The monitors sang their flatline alarm. But Martha didn't move to silence them. Not yet. She watched Sam's face transform in death, the lines of guilt and grief smoothing into something that looked like absolution. Outside, Ghost lifted his great head to the star-filled sky and released a sound unlike any cheetah vocalization ever recorded. It began as the typical chirp, but elongated into something between a howl and a keen, a lamentation that carried across the savannah. One by one, his 3 offspring joined him, their voices creating a harmony of grief that raised goosebumps on Martha's arms. Then, impossibly, from the darkness came answers. A lion's roar from the north, not aggressive but acknowledging. The trumpet of elephants from the eastern wetlands. The whooping call of hyenas. The bark of jackals. The cry of fish-eagles roosting by the river. For one extraordinary moment, the African night sang with unified loss. Predator and prey. Hunter and hunted. All acknowledging the passing of someone who had stood between their world and human destruction for 25 years. Dr. Hayes arrived within minutes. Summoned by the alarms, he found Martha standing by the window, tears streaming down her face, watching as Ghost continued his vigil. The 3 younger cheetahs had formed a perfect line beside him, all facing the cabin, maintaining what could only be described as a guard of honor. "Time of death," Hayes said softly, checking his watch, though the formality seemed absurd in the face of what was happening outside. 4:15 a.m., October 18th, 2024. "No," Martha corrected, her eyes never leaving Ghost. "Time of death sunrise. Let him have the light he loved." Hayes nodded, understanding. They stood together in silence as the darkness began its slow retreat, waiting for dawn to officially close the remarkable life of Samuel Whitfield, the man who had transformed guilt into grace, one rescued soul at a time. The sun had barely cleared the horizon when Martha discovered the second box. She'd been gathering Sam's personal effects, her movements mechanical in grief, when she noticed a loose floorboard beneath his desk. Lifting it revealed a metal strongbox with a simple envelope taped to its lid. "To be opened only after my death, Samuel Whitfield." Inside the envelope was a single sheet of paper in Sam's handwriting. "Martha or Robert, the truth about Daniel is in the military records beneath. He deserves to be known for who he really was. The other documents explain everything else. Please forgive my deceptions. They were necessary. Sam." Martha's hands trembled as she lifted out a bundle of official military documents, their edges brown with age. The first was a commendation letter from Colonel James Richardson, dated March 15th, 1964. "It is with profound sorrow and deepest respect that I write regarding the heroic actions of Specialist Daniel Whitfield, Medical Corps, on March 3rd, 1964, in Pleiku Province, Republic of Vietnam. Specialist Whitfield voluntarily joined a patrol to establish a forward aid station, despite being scheduled for R&R the following day. When the patrol was ambushed by a superior force, Whitfield immediately began treating the wounded under heavy fire. Upon learning that 6 wounded soldiers were pinned down in an exposed rice paddy, Specialist Whitfield volunteered to attempt their rescue. Against direct orders and in full knowledge of the extreme danger, Whitfield made 7 runs into the killing field. On his first 6 runs, he successfully dragged wounded men to safety, refusing to stop despite sustaining shrapnel wounds to his legs and shoulder. Each trip required crossing 40 meters of open ground under concentrated machine gun and mortar fire. On his 7th attempt, while carrying Private First Class Anthony Martinez, Specialist Whitfield was struck by multiple rounds. Despite his mortal wounds, he managed to push Martinez into the drainage ditch where medics could reach him before succumbing to his injuries. The 6 men saved by Specialist Whitfield have provided testimony that he was praying aloud during each rescue, asking God to let me get just one more. His actions represent the highest traditions of military service and human courage. Specialist Whitfield has been posthumously recommended for the Medal of Honor. His family should know that he died not as a victim, but as a hero who chose, repeatedly and deliberately, to place others' lives above his own. Martha sank into Sam's chair, the letter shaking in her hands. Beneath it was another document, Daniel's last written report, filed the day before his death. "Mom always said we were put here to help. Sammy showed me that was true when he became a medic. Tomorrow we establish a forward position that could save hundreds of wounded over the coming months. I volunteered to go. I'm scared. But Sammy taught me that courage isn't about not being afraid, it's about doing what's right despite the fear. If something happens to me, tell my brother this wasn't his fault. This was my choice, my honor. We're Whitfield men. We run toward trouble, not away. To Specialist Daniel Whitfield. Tears blurred Martha's vision as she realized the weight Sam had carried. His little brother hadn't been a random casualty, but had deliberately, repeatedly chosen danger to save others, just as Sam had taught him through example. The guilt Sam felt wasn't just survivor's guilt. It was the crushing weight of believing his influence had led Daniel to his death. Dr. Hayes arrived as Martha was still processing the military documents. "Martha, I need you to see something," he said, his usual administrative composure replaced by bewilderment. "I was reviewing Sam's employment records for the death certificate, and nothing makes sense." He spread financial documents across the desk. Sam's official salary was barely subsistence level. He requested the minimum wage every year, refused all raises. But look at this. Hayes pointed to a bank statement from a Kenyan account. Regular transfers to the reserve's operational fund, monthly, for 20 years. Always anonymous. Always exactly enough to cover critical shortfalls. Martha examined the statements. The amounts were substantial, thousands of dollars monthly. Where did the money come from? Hayes pulled out another document. This one from a law firm in Ohio. The Whitfield family estate. Sam's parents died in 1975, left everything to their only surviving son. The family had agricultural land, mineral rights, investments going back 3 generations. Sam never touched a penny for himself. The numbers were staggering. Over 20 years. Sam had donated nearly $3 million to conservation efforts, but it went deeper than just money. Hayes uncovered receipt after receipt, 12 ranger salaries paid anonymously, ensuring local families had stable income, anti-poaching equipment purchased whenever government funding fell short, veterinary supplies that mysteriously appeared whenever the medical unit ran low, scholarship funds for local children to attend wildlife management programs. He lived like a pauper, Hayes said, voice thick with emotion. That tiny cabin, his ancient truck, patched clothes, all while sitting on millions. He gave everything away. Martha found another bundle of documents, these from a Nairobi law firm. The top page made her gasp. Deed of transfer, Morrison Wildlife Sanctuary. Sam had been systematically purchasing land around the reserve for 2 decades, using shell companies and trusts to hide his involvement. 10,000 acres of critical habitat, including migration corridors and water sources that developers had been eyeing for years. Morrison, Hayes questioned. Martha smiled through her tears. His mother's maiden name, Sarah Morrison Whitfield. She was a Quaker, believed in stewardship of the earth. The final document was dated just 1 month ago, when Sam already knew he was dying. Upon my death, all lands held in trust are to be transferred to the Masai Mara Conservation Reserve, with the following conditions. The land shall be known as the Daniel Whitfield Memorial Sanctuary. No hunting, no development. In perpetuity. Funding for maintenance has been established through an endowment sufficient for 100 years of operation. Hayes sat down heavily. He saved this place. All those times we nearly had to close sections, reduce patrols, lay off rangers, it was Sam. Every time, it was Sam. There's more, Martha said, finding a leather journal marked Staff Records Private. Inside, Sam had kept detailed notes on every employee of the reserve, not their work performance, but their lives. Thomas Okoye's daughter, showing signs of exceptional intelligence, arranged scholarship through anonymous donor. James Mwangi's wife's cancer treatment medical bills mysteriously paid by insurance error that couldn't be reversed. Margaret Wanjiru's son's acceptance to veterinary school surprise grant from American Conservation Society that doesn't exist. Page after page revealed Sam's hidden kindness. He'd been the guardian angel not just for animals but for dozens of human families. always working through supposed bureaucratic windfalls or anonymous gifts, never allowing anyone to thank him. Look at this. Hayes pointed to a note dated 3 years ago. Robert Hayes, struggling with father's death, arranged for conference invitation to Michigan, all expenses paid, so he can visit grave without admitting need. Hayes's voice broke. That conference. I thought I'd won some random drawing. He knew I needed to go home but was too proud to ask for leave. Martha found one final letter in the strongbox, sealed and addressed to both of them. If you're reading this, then Ghost made it to say goodbye, and I can leave knowing the debt is partially paid. Daniel saved 6 men, I saved 87 animals. But the real salvation was mine. Every creature freed from a snare freed me a little from my guilt. Every ranger's child educated was the child Daniel never had. Every acre preserved was the home he never built. I'm not a hero like my brother. I'm just someone who learned too late that love doesn't divide. When shared, it multiplies. Daniel knew this at 8 years old, saving sparrows. At 19, saving soldiers. It took me a lifetime to understand. Please don't mourn me. I've had the extraordinary privilege of living 2 lives, mine and the one Daniel might have had. The sanctuary is my testimony that one person's courage can echo through time, inspiring even cowards like me to attempt nobility. Tell Ghost's story. Let people know that wild things remember kindness, that bridges can be built between worlds, that sometimes a creature will walk through hell to honor love, but mostly, tell them about Daniel, who ran toward danger 7 times, who saved 6 strangers because that's what Whitfield men do. With gratitude for your friendship and care, Sam P.S. Martha. In my desk drawer is a photo. Please place it at the sanctuary entrance. It's Daniel at 8, holding the sparrow we saved. That's how I choose to remember him, not as a soldier, but as a boy who believed everything broken could be healed with enough love. Martha found the photo exactly where Sam had indicated. A grinning boy with Sam's eyes held a small bird, its wing wrapped in a makeshift gauze bandage. Young Sam stood behind him, hand on his little brother's shoulder, both of them radiating joy at their small victory over death. Through the window, Ghost remained at his post, the morning sun turning his coat to gold. He'd traveled 400 kilometers, not just to say goodbye to the man who'd saved him, but to honor someone who'd spent 60 years saving everything he could reach, building a monument of preserved life to a brother whose heroism had shaped 2 lives across decades and continents. Dawn broke across the Masai Mara with spectacular beauty, as if nature itself was providing Sam Whitfield with the send-off he deserved. Golden light spilled across the Savannah, transforming the grassland into a sea of amber waves. Ghost had maintained his vigil through the remaining hours of darkness, never moving from his position 15 feet from the porch, his 3 offspring arranged beside him in perfect symmetry. Martha stood at the window, having kept her own vigil through the night. She'd covered Sam's body with his mother's quilt, but hadn't yet called for the removal team. Something told her to wait, to let this unprecedented moment reach its natural conclusion. At exactly 6:15 a.m., as the sun fully cleared the horizon, Ghost stood. His movement was deliberate, almost ceremonial. The 3 younger cheetahs rose with him, their bodies tense with anticipation. Ghost turned to face the cabin one final time, his ancient eyes seeming to look through the walls to where Sam's body lay in peaceful repose. Then he did something that would be debated in wildlife journals for years to come. Ghost walked to the exact spot where Sam's wheelchair had been positioned the night before, where they'd shared their final contact. He lowered his great scarred head to the ground and remained that way for exactly 10 seconds, a bow, a salute, or perhaps a prayer in whatever language the wild speaks to its own. When he raised his head, Ghost released a single, short vocalization, not the mournful cry of the previous night, but something clearer, almost like a farewell. Then he turned and began walking away from the cabin with measured dignity. The 3 younger cheetahs fell into formation behind him, and as they crested the small rise 50 meters from Sam's cabin, they created a perfect V formation, the same formation used by migrating birds, a symbol of journeys and returns that every human watching immediately recognized. "My God," Dr. Hayes whispered, standing beside Martha. They're actually maintaining formation. The four cheetahs paused at the ridgeline, silhouetted against the morning sky. Each one, starting with the youngest and ending with Ghost, turned back to look at the cabin. It was a choreographed goodbye, each gaze lasting just a few seconds before the cheetah turned forward again. Ghost was the last to look back, and his pause was longest, his silver-scarred form glowing in the early light like something out of legend. Then they were gone, walking steadily into the vast expanse of the savannah, their forms growing smaller until they were just specks against the golden grass. Then nothing at all. The African wilderness had reclaimed its own, taking Ghost back into its ancient embrace. "He waited," Martha said softly, tears flowing freely. "Ghost waited until Sam was truly gone before leaving." Hayes nodded, unable to speak. Around them, the reserve was coming alive with its morning sounds, birds calling, insects humming, the distant roar of a lion marking territory, life continuing its eternal cycle, just as Sam would have wanted. Thomas Okoye was the first to break the silence among the gathered staff. "We should document everything," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Every detail. People need to know what happened here." "They will," Martha promised. "Every bit of it. Sam's story, Daniel's story, and Ghost's journey, all of it." The removal of Sam's body was conducted with unusual ceremony. Every staff member who could be spared formed an honor guard as Sam was carried from his cabin. Someone Martha never found out who had placed a cheetah conservation flag over the stretcher. As they loaded Sam into the vehicle, a family of elephants appeared on the eastern horizon, their trunks raised in what looked remarkably like a salute. 6 months later, April 15th, 2025, the Daniels Promise Wildlife Center stood complete, its modern facilities a stark contrast to Sam's humble cabin, which had been preserved exactly as he'd left it. The dedication ceremony had drawn over 200 attendees, including representatives from conservation organizations worldwide, government officials, and surprisingly, a delegation of aging Vietnam veterans who'd flown from America at their own expense. "We're here for Danny," explained Sergeant Major Anthony Martinez, retired, the last man Daniel had saved. "Lived my whole life knowing I only got to see my kids grow up because a 19-year-old medic refused to leave me behind. When we heard about this place, about what his brother did here, we had to come." The ceremony was held at sunset, the time Sam had loved best. Dr. Robert Hayes, wearing his best suit rather than his usual khakis, stood at the podium, struggling to control his emotions. "Samuel Whitfield was the most frustrating, stubborn, secretive man I ever worked with," Hayes began, drawing gentle laughter from those who'd known Sam. "He refused every comfort, every recognition, every attempt to thank him. I thought I understood conservation, thought I knew what dedication meant. Sam taught me I knew nothing." Hayes paused, looking out at the assembled crowd. "Sam didn't just save animals. He saved this reserve, saved families, saved me when I didn't even know I needed saving. He did it all in secret, in honor of a brother who died saving others 60 years ago. Today, we dedicate this center not just to wildlife conservation, but to the principle the Whitfield brothers lived by, that every life matters, that courage is action despite fear, and that love doesn't end with death." The crowd stood as Hayes unveiled the memorial plaque at the entrance. It read, "Daniels Promise Wildlife Center, in memory of Daniel Whitfield, 1945-1964, who saved 6, and Samuel Whitfield, 1956-2024, who saved 87 and counting. Every life saved honors those lost." Beside the plaque, in a climate-controlled case, hung Daniel's Medal of Honor, donated by the Whitfield estate. Next to it was the photograph Martha had found 8-year-old Daniel holding the sparrow, young Sam beside him, both boys glowing with the joy of a small life saved. Martha, now the center's director, took the podium next. "Sam once told me that his brother believed everything broken could be healed with enough love. This center is proof that belief can transcend death, that promises can outlive those who make them, and that sometimes the wild remembers our kindness in ways that humble us. She paused, scanning the horizon. 3 days ago, our motion cameras captured something remarkable. A female cheetah, approximately 4 years old, approaching our eastern boundary. She was leading 2 cubs, both injured by what appeared to be hyena attacks. She brought them directly to our veterinary compound and waited while we treated them just as Ghost waited for Sam. She bears a distinctive scar on her left shoulder, crescent-shaped in silver. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Martha smiled. Ghost's daughter has learned her father's greatest lesson, that some humans can be trusted, that this place is sanctuary. She's the first of what we hope will be many generations of wildlife that see us not as threats, but as the guardians Sam trained us to be. As the ceremony concluded and guests walked through the new facilities, they found themselves drawn to what Martha called the memory wall. 87 photographs covered it, each showing one of Sam's rescues. Some were professional shots, others blurry captures from old cameras, but every image told a story of life saved. At the center was a photo no one had seen before Sam and Ghost, taken by a hidden camera in 2015. Sam was older, grayer, sitting by a waterhole, and Ghost was drinking just 10 feet away, both completely at ease in each other's presence. That evening, as the last guests departed, Martha stood alone at Sam's preserved cabin. She'd brought with her a small cheetah cub, orphaned when its mother was killed by a vehicle strike. The cub was weak, dehydrated, frightened, exactly the kind of case Sam would have taken on without hesitation. Martha sat on the porch, cradling the cub, and began to sing, "Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound." The cub's rapid breathing began to slow. Its eyes, wild with fear moments before, focused on Martha's face. She continued singing, all the verses Sam had taught her during his final days, and gradually felt the tiny body relax against her chest. As the stars emerged in the vast African sky, a sound carried across the savannah, a cheetah's call, distant but distinct. Martha looked up to see a silhouette on the ridge where Ghost had last paused. It was impossible to be certain in the darkness, but the shape, the posture, the patient stillness were unmistakable. "Hello, old friend," Martha whispered. "Still checking on us? Are you?" The silhouette remained for another moment, then melted into the night. Martha never saw Ghost again. No one did, but his offspring continued to appear at the sanctuary's borders, bringing injured cubs, teaching them through example that this place, these people, could be trusted. The Daniels Promise Wildlife Center grew over the following years, becoming a model for conservation efforts worldwide. Every ranger trained there learned Sam's methods, patience, gentleness, and the power of a soft song to calm a frightened creature. They learned that conservation wasn't just about preserving species, but about building bridges between worlds, creating trust that could span generations. The wall of photographs grew too. 87 became 100, then 200, then beyond counting. Each image a promise kept, a life saved, a debt of love paid forward. Sam's cabin became a pilgrimage site for conservationists who would sit on his porch and watch the savannah, hoping for a glimpse of Ghost's descendants, understanding finally what Sam had known all along, that some promises echo through eternity, carried on in the memories of the wild, in the scarred shoulders of cheetahs who remember kindness, in the songs sung to frightened creatures by those who learned that gentleness is its own form of courage. And somewhere in the vast expanse of the Masai Mara, an ancient cheetah's legacy lived on through his offspring. Who knew, without understanding why, that humans near the old wooden cabin could be trusted? That sanctuary existed. That love, even between species, never truly dies but transforms, adapts, and endures. I need to tell you something about this story that haunts me. When I first heard about Sam and Ghost, I thought it was about redemption, a man saving animals to atone for his brother's death. But I was wrong. This is about gratitude's longest journey. Ghost didn't travel 400 kilometers because Sam saved him once. He came because, for 22 years, he remembered. In our world of instant messages and forgotten kindnesses, a wild creature held a memory of gentleness for 2 decades, then risked everything to say goodbye, and family. Sam thought he'd failed Daniel by having no children, no traditional legacy. But Ghost taught his offspring to trust the cabin where kindness lived. 3 generations now approach that sanctuary, carrying forward a trust born from one moment of mercy. Sam had a family after all, just not the kind we expect. You see, we measure love by our own definitions: blood, marriage, species. But Sam and Daniel, Sam and Ghost, they remind me that family is simply whoever travels impossible distances to be with us at the end. Sometimes that's a brother saving strangers in a rice paddy. Sometimes it's an ancient cheetah crossing lion territory. Sometimes love speaks without words, just presence.